Museum Digit
2020.
A Magyar Nemzeti Múzeum online
virtuális konferenciája.
Hello, and thank you for attending this talk on Giving History a Digital Life. My name is Ivor Crotty. I'm Deputy Director of Creation and Innovation at RT in Moscow. I'm an Irish journalist and sociologist, and I've been working for about 5 years in social media storytelling. Before that, I was head of social media for the news network RT. A little bit about my background, just to tell you, because simply not everybody has to be a social media purist to work in social media, but I've been a factory worker, a sociologist, a lecturer, an investigative journalist. I've worked with news agencies in Moscow. I've worked in mobile advertising. I've worked for a long time in newsrooms, television newsrooms and digital newsrooms. I've been head of social media for an international network, building what is now a 10 billion view YouTube ecosystem. And I am now Deputy Director of Creative and Innovation. What does that mean? Well, on the creative side, I'm editorial director of multi-award winning historical projects. I work on storytelling, narrative and design for projects which I'll talk to you about today, and the mantras from which we have learned I will pass on to you today. And we look at concept research and development for new projects and new stories unfolding. On the innovation side, I design digital work processes for organizations that have stories to tell. I build capacity, I train and I teach digital publishing, both internally in the network. I advocate for digital storytelling, particularly in the museum sector. I'm a lecturer in digital journalism in the Moscow Higher School of Economics. And we train social media journalists in the RT network. So today, I'd like to convey to you some very significant mantras from our storytelling that I suggest you can involve into your storytelling and into your work as you go forward. And these are very simply that you, in your work, answer a question. You tell human stories. You inspire your audience to learn. You educate them. You are authentic in the work that you do. You innovate, improvise, and play. You value community and you collaborate. And finally, you do good. So, let's look at the landscape. Since Corona, museums have turned towards digital and turned towards social media storytelling in great ways. And probably there's a lot of fear out there about how best to tell stories in digital in a way that perhaps doesn't violate the sanctity of the original artifacts that you're working with. The NEMO survey that was taken earlier this year shows that social media is one of the most popular avenues to which museums are turning. If we look at the ICOM survey taken around about the same time in the summer, we can see that the vast majority of museums are moving into social media to try to reach their audience. We can see that here on the right of the screen. This raises questions, and it certainly raises questions around the capacity of museums to do that. And one of the reasons I'm here today is to tell you that it's okay, that by employing very simple mantras in your storytelling and planning a project from beginning, you can reach new audience where they are, and that is, for better or for worse, on the social media platforms. Now, one of the questions about that you're sure to ask, and any museologist or curator would ask, well then, how do we preserve the sanctity of the original work of art when we are mechanically reproducing it? And in this sense, I think we should turn to Walter Benjamin, who in 1935 wrote a beautiful essay on the work of art and mechanical reproduction, and to embrace some of the lessons that Benjamin taught us at that time. Mechanical reproduction, according to Benjamin, emancipates the work of art from its parasitical dependence on ritual. Technical reproduction can put the copy of the original into situations which would be out of reach for the original itself. And this is very much what we do in social media and very much part of the social media ethos. Above all, technical reproduction enables the original to meet the beholder halfway, be it in the form of a photograph or a phonograph record. The cathedral, in this sense, leaves its locale to be received in the studio of a lover of art. The choral production, performed in an auditorium or in the open air, resounds in the drawing room. Some of these ideas will come through in what I'm about to tell you, and certainly from the projects that I'm about to describe to you that we've done over the last 4 years. Those projects are Romanov's 100, which was a 100-day for social media platform digital storytelling of the lives of the Romanov family, based on 4,000 photographs that we found in the Russian State Archive, which they digitized for us and which we then published over 4 social media platforms in the 100 days leading to the centenary of their murder by the Bolsheviks. And 1917 Live, which was a real-time Twitter retelling of Russia's revolutions, if Twitter existed at the time. Let me then show you certain case studies from Romanov's 100, and then we'll look at 1917 Live, and then we'll get to the mantras.
Russia's last royal family, the Romanovs, were photography pioneers. They left a unique eyewitness account of the early 20th century, but this history was kept in the dark during Soviet rule. On the centenary of their murder, we digitized over 4,000 analog images once stored in Romanov family albums to give these photos a second life on social media. Romanov's 100 is an online documentary unfolding over 4 social platforms, each showcasing its own narrative and content. First-person Twitter avatars, documentary shorts on YouTube, 3D photos and panoramas on Facebook, artistic visuals on Instagram. Every photo was researched to create visually driven storytelling with craft elements such as VR animation, an AR application, 3D experiences. We created a history simulator which turns education into an interactive process.
So as you can see, the Romanov 100 project that started with 4,000 photographs then evolved across both array of social media platforms into real events and indeed an augmented reality book, of which we're very proud. 1917 Live was a very different beast. It lived on a single platform. It was based on our experience as journalists, working with Twitter, breaking news on Twitter, and we used the language and the tone of that platform to imagine what if Twitter existed 100 years ago.
Have you ever dreamed of time travel? RT brings you a digital time machine that takes you back to 1917, the year of the Russian Revolution. We looked at the Revolution centenary and wondered, what if Twitter existed 100 years ago? So we set up dozens of real Twitter accounts, all in the names of historic figures, from Vladimir Lenin to the Russian Emperor, and from factory workers to soldiers. Then we turned actual history, diaries, letters, and memoirs into real-time tweets. History became a dynamic roleplay. All the accounts are linked by the Russian Telegraph, a fictitious media outlet, which is rebranded as the Revolutionary Times after the Bolshevik takeover. The accounts form a unique Twitter ecosystem under the hashtag 1917Live. So with the stage set, the tweeting of the revolution begins, with events from a century ago reported like breaking news, as if it's all happening now, with timely opinion polls on the burning issues of the fading Russian Empire, with live Q&A sessions featuring key historic players, and even Lenin himself streaming live on Periscope from his secret hideout. We also shot 8 panoramic videos. With these short feature films, viewers could see everyday life of the revolutionary year all around them. And the audience loves it. 1917 Live accounts have gathered over 250,000 followers. More than 275,000 tweets use the hashtag, generating over 75 million impressions. Historians, politicians, political scientists, journalists and researchers from all over the world are following hashtag 1917Live. The revolution is being retweeted by students, teachers, professors, and simply history buffs. The revolution continues. And as Vladimir Lenin himself once tweeted,
So that was 1917 Live, and before that, Romanovs 100. We did not expect to be awarded the prizes that we received for that work, but the prizes came, and we're very grateful for the recognition of our peers in the digital publishing industry for that. They saw in it both forms of social good, education, publishing quality, and innovation. We're very grateful for those awards, and we're very happy perhaps that those awards have allowed us to address audiences such as this today. So our mantras: answer a question, tell human stories, inspire to learn, educate, be authentic, innovate, improvise, and play, value community and collaborate, and do good. Let's look at some examples from the storytelling that we've done that might help illustrate how best you can integrate that into your work. Firstly, let's look at 1917 Live. When we say answer a question, we very simply imagined what it would be like if Twitter existed 100 years ago. A very simple composition, and we built that into our storytelling, and we factored that into our advertising. Perhaps the best way I can describe that to you is to show you again a short case video that introduces our dramatis personae, Nicholas Romanov, who's just resigning. Normally he would reach for a cigarette in his rail carriage, but at this point he didn't, and he reached for his phone. You can have a look at it now.
On his way from the army headquarters, Russian Emperor Nicholas II is forced to stand down from the throne. He signs the abdication and hands it over to representatives of the Russian Duma, who will officially announce the Tsar's decision later. In just 16 months, Nicholas II and his whole family will be shot.
Tell human stories. Well, with the Romanovs, we in particular wanted to avoid that sense of following lead historical characters, typically male historical characters, and to diversify the voices that we incorporated into our storytelling. We focused very strongly on the lives of the daughters, the Otma sisters as they became known. And we tried very much to depict their lives in the way that they had depicted it through their photography and allow their human voices to come through. This was certainly possible by using diary entries, multiple diary entries, which we incorporated from diaries from Nicholas Romanov, from the Empress, and from the children themselves who kept diaries. And we were able to tell touching first-person stories in a way that could engage a social media audience and trigger their emotions to relate to the story and to perhaps understand the story in a different way. We inspired to learn. Our work, somewhat unexpectedly, was picked up by teachers and university lecturers around the world. This testimony is from Kate Littlejohn in rural Australia, who picked up 1917 Live and began to show that to her students, her teenage students, in a rural Australian classroom where they could just open up the TweetDeck or open up Twitter and say, well, what was happening in Russia 100 years ago? This gave her students an opportunity to really connect and engage with the story. As Kate says, kids get enough names, dates, facts, but here they see the story with all of the characters in one place. She'll use it forever. It's a great case study for how history as methodology is changing. It brings these changes into clear relief in an authentic way. And to educate. And this was where a real difference was made for us. The ongoing sense of the story, Kate continues. The consistency and multiple perspectives simultaneously articulated through Twitter tone of voice gave the kids something that they could understand. And storytelling for her is key to it. But also significantly, Kate was working in a community that was struck by drought and that was suffering hard times. And she told us that opening up the laptop and projecting these tweets onto a wall or onto a screen in the classroom allowed some of the children who couldn't afford textbooks to avoid that stigma and to engage more equally with the work that they were doing in the class. And that's something of which we were completely unaware, but of which we're very proud. Authenticity is a difficult word when it comes to social media storytelling, but I can certainly give you a couple of pieces of advice on how to present oneself and to present your narrative as an authentic social media narrative. First of all, to be transparent with your audience is absolutely fundamental. We should engage with our audience and enjoy the dialogue with our audience that occurs on social media platforms. Transparency builds trust and brand loyalty. Real-time storytelling means real time spent with your audience. Your audience will engage around specific events that can be told in real time. And lastly, it's absolutely vitally important to learn and to speak your platform's language. I'll show you a little bit of what I mean. As far as authenticity is concerned, this is an example from 1917 Live, where we tweeted a piece of old footage and said that this footage had alleged to have been from downtown Petrograd. Now, one of our audience members very quickly told us on Twitter that that wasn't the case, that this was a film for the Brandenburg Gate. In the best traditions of journalism, and certainly in the best traditions of social media storytelling, we issued a retraction, we listened to our audience, we acknowledged what they said, and when we clarified that we had made a mistake and that this video to our audience was not real. When it came to Twitter then, one of the key elements was first-person storytelling. And here, for example, you can see the accounts of Nicholas Romanov, Alexandra Romanova, the Empress, and the Romanov sisters, Olga, Tatiana, and Anastasia. Each of these accounts was very deeply researched and was focused on details from their diaries or describing events that they may have seen and imagining how they would have reacted to it. It allowed our audience to investigate particular personalities that they wanted to without having to listen all the time to what the main political figures were doing, but to experience history in a different way, in a multi-narrative kind of way. With Instagram, we focused very clearly on what Instagram is strongest for, and that is around lifestyle, again around first-person storytelling, and around kind of experiential narratives where people will describe how they're feeling or describe emotions. That was central to our success on Instagram, and as you can see from the photographs we've selected here, they're very personal, very unusual, some of them involve misprints that the Romanovs would have done while they were developing the photographs in their workshop in their palace in Sarsky Ceylon, and others simple, pleasant family moments that perhaps any family could have engaged in. So to innovate, improvise and play, I think it's appropriate to recall Benjamin's words that we mentioned earlier. We must enable the original to meet the beholder halfway in social media storytelling. Technical reproduction, as Benjamin said, can put the copy of the original into situations which would be out of reach for the original itself. And that is where we try to meet our social media audience. We try to meet them halfway. I'll give you some examples. Working with the Russian State Archive, we discovered that Anastasia Romanova had begun to colorize plates of black and white photographs that she had taken. She was really quite an avid photographer. We had been collaborating with the photo colorizer and author Marina Amaral, and we asked Marina to both finish some of the work that Anastasia had started with some photos, but also to judge a competition whereby we opened some of those photos, those unfinished photos, to our audience, who could then research them, engage with the stories that were around them, discover the tints, the colors and the fabrics, and then submit their work, which would be judged by Marina. A certain kind of gamification of experiential storytelling, if you will. Sometimes opportunities just land on your lap, and in this case with Facebook, 2 opportunities landed which we took full advantage. Facebook launched a 3D photo filter, which allowed everybody to upload photographs, and Facebook would apply this 3D lens to it and give it a sense of depth that hadn't been there in the original. We were able to do that then with some of the portraits from the Romanov archive, and the effect was absolutely excellent, as you can see from this case. Secondly, while we were publishing, Facebook launched a panorama filter. This allowed an audience to upload a panorama photo or to engage with a panorama photo in an augmented reality kind of way, where they could scan through the photograph with their phone, or they could view the whole photograph or scroll through it on their desktop. Now, it's not well known that the Romanovs it's not well known that the cameras that the Romanovs used, namely the Kodak Brownie, did have a panorama function. It had this beautiful brass handle at the back. And they took panorama shots of extraordinary detail, which we were able to work with and which we were able to upload to Facebook, producing very, very powerful effect and giving our audience a sense that these were being published almost live into this technology platform. As you can see, the content, the work of art, is meeting the beholder halfway, and the technology platform is where that meeting takes place. But that is a sense of improvisation and play that we hadn't planned, that we weren't necessarily prepared to do, but once the opportunity came, we took it. And last but not least, in terms of narrative storytelling, this is a favourite of mine and a favourite of many. While we were publishing 1917 Live, Twitter changed its format from 140 characters to 280 characters. Now, this was an opportunity which Vladimir Lenin, arch propagandist, could not turn down. Vladimir Lenin went into hiding in July of 1917, and we imagined a scenario around that where if he was using Twitter, which we had him using Twitter, if he was using Twitter, he would make his tweets protected so he couldn't be traced and his location couldn't be discovered. So we built a scenario around that where some of his followers started tweeting, had anybody seen him? He's not answering his direct messages. His tweets have been protected online, and created a kind of sense of where is he, and a sense of drama around a historical event. Lenin then responds with a photograph of a shack in which he spent some time somewhere outside St. Petersburg, and saying that he's okay and that he will be back. But then an opportunity presented itself which Lenin couldn't resist. Twitter changed from 140 characters to 280 characters. And as you can see, Lenin rejoiced in that, turned that opportunity, or turned that event into a propaganda opportunity, celebrating that today, thanks to the Bolshevik victory over the oppressive bourgeois regime, everyone can enjoy 280 characters. This is the sense of play that I think you can imbue with your work, that will reach audience, that will give them a sense of fun, but also a sense of learning, and help them to discover a story in a new way, and discover history and understand those narratives in a new way. We should also value community. As we used to say in social media journalism, every news event creates its own online community. And in this sense, if we are retelling news events, or if we are retelling historical events, we know that an online community will be built around that. But community is not exclusively about business to customer. It's not just about B2C and reaching your audience. There is a B2B community of extraordinarily talented, brilliant, and well-informed storytellers, researchers, curators, and museum professionals with whom it's also possible to collaborate to create a general public interest around the stories that you have to tell. And one of the great examples of that is the Curator Battle, which takes place regularly on Twitter, and it's typically hosted by the Yorkshire Museum. In this case that I'm presenting to you, this is a case about cats. Well, of course, it's social media, so what could be better? We needed cats. Yorkshire Museum sends out a Curator Battle call with a photograph of one of its best cats. It's very quickly responded to by St. Albans Museum, and then this starts to spiral. Yorkshire Museum takes a screenshot, sends it back, then the Sainsbury Archive jumps in. That's with design images from 1960s. The Museums of the University of St. Andrews jumps in with a very frightening issue of a cat. The Royal Armoury starts to jump in. And then finally, the Hermitage, famous for its cats, insists that its infamy be recognised in the thread. And you can see that there's a sense of fun here, and there's a sense of play taking place between these museums. These very, very austere and globally respected museums. But on social, there is a sense of play in their voice, and that helps an audience respond to that, and an audience feels more confident that it can engage with that archive material. You can see then that it starts to go global. The Museum of Scotland is in, the Canadian Museum of History, Royal Academy in France, La Musée in France, and finally Yorkshire Museum with the Pièce de Résistance, which is a well-known Twitter meme, again kind of imbuing the entire conversation with a sense of fun. Last but not least, let me recount the mantras to you, and I hope that you've seen some examples in my work that you feel you can take with you. If not, please feel to contact me or get in touch with the guys at the conference, and I'd be very happy to talk to you about your work. A. Answer a question. What if Twitter existed 100 years ago? Tell human stories. Try to get away from the dominant male first-person narratives and to embrace the diversity and multiplicity of narrative storytelling that social media enables. Inspire people to learn. Give them the wow factor. Don't give them everything, but give an audience a sense of that there is something that they can learn if they investigate that story, and then deliver upon that promise. provide resources through which your audience can learn. Be authentic, be honest, be transparent with your audience, speak your platform language. Don't be all YouTube on Facebook and don't be all Twitter on Instagram. You need to understand that each of these platforms has an idiom and a tone and a language and an aesthetic principle of its own, and that if you can show you can master that, you will build confidence with your audience on each of those platforms. Innovate, improvise, and play. They're very, very important in the social media lexicon, and to give an audience a sense of fun, to disarm them, to pull the work of art out of the cathedral into the drawing room is what we're trying to achieve with our storytelling. Value community. Every news event creates an online community, and remember that you are part of one of the most informed communities in the world, and that is the museum community and the community of museum curators and storytellers. You are running the archives that are precious. And last but not least, do good. Embrace multiple narratives in your storytelling, embrace education, have the confidence to bring the works of art that you curate into a social media context with which the audience can have fun. I thank you very much for spending a little bit of time with me this afternoon. I hope you enjoyed it. And again, I would like to thank Vika and Virag for the opportunity to address this august conference.